Hey everyone, welcome back to Crypto Cash. Thanks again so much for joining me here. Hope you're having a phenomenal day. We have some important stuff we want to look at, specifically these order blocks. There's a lot more order blocks to the downside than the upside, suggesting we may actually see some push or continuation higher. Keep in mind 90,000 is heavily guarded with a very large sell order there at 90K. So just bear in mind if we hit that level, strong chance we get a rejection there. We're also going to touch on dominance and obviously look at liquidation here and kind of just see what this means for us here on the macro structure. So be sure to stick around. We got a good one today. Let's take a look. All right, folks, before we get started, quickly hit the like button if you would, please. Do not forget to like, subscribe, and follow if you haven't yet already. And what we want to look at first things first is just kind of the fiat-backed stablecoins. This is basically how much money's flowing into stablecoin or out at any given time. And we can see here, roughly, as of yesterday, there was a significant outflow, right? And that's when price was pulling back and we hit that low 87K range. While I still think there's a decent chance we see 86,000 with that pocket of liquidation we're going to look at here in a moment, we have decent momentum here and there is a lot of volume to the downside, suggesting here that there's more interest in pushing the price action higher than suppressing it. Now, when I say suppressing it, that's a different story altogether. Big picture, 90,000 is that heavy sell wall. We can see $111 million in one ask order, essentially at 90,000. Basically wanting to sell that level. So just be mindful. That is essentially pretty strong resistance, 90K. But when we look at liquidation, let's go ahead and double check this here. We can see we're pretty close or much closer to this lower range here. What's basically the late longs here. So late longs are at 86,800. And if we do take a look at the last 7 days, there's also a lot more liquidation on the downside too. So while we might see a short-term pump to the upside here, I think it's going to be short-lived, just based simply on the fact that there's too much liquidation on the downside that was more manipulative potential there to sweep those late longs. Okay, so it just kind of seems like it's too good to be true right now. Now let's take a look here at the general structure. Just 30 days here worth of liquidation. You can see 84,000 still at big chunk, and 90.5 to 92,000 is the upper range. So we're still kind of smack dab in the middle there. So from a larger perspective, we're not at a concerning level. We're kind of ranging pretty well within this 86 to 90K range. But if you look in a little bit closer, you can kind of zoom in. There's that 86.5K significant area of liquidation. So there's probably 10 to 20 billion liquidation right at 86,000 to 86.5. So it's a pretty big chunk. Just something to be mindful of. When we look at open interest, 90,000 still at resistance range, 89,000's above that, or right there at that level rather. In other words, we have two heavy areas of resistance. So significantly underwhelming here based on the simple fact that Bitcoin needs to be able to break through that level to effectively have any legs to stand on. So once more, a closure of above 90,000, preferably 94,000 on the macro, would put us in a much better position to expect further upside or to see the price continue to run. Between now and then, I think stuck on stupid is probably the best way to describe it. Today's a holiday too. You got to be mindful that traditional markets are not really firing here today, so volume's generally lower. All that being said, liquidation deltas at 1 billion to the downside, but you can see this kind of choppy behavior, right? Up and down, kind of within small margins. Bitcoin should be at like 10 to 20 billion liquidation if we're going to have any type of significant continuation potential. Okay, right now seeing 1 to 2 billion is really underwhelming, for lack of better terms, for this coin. Once more, all the liquidation is about 86.5 here locally. So let's take a look at the macro structure and just kind of recognize too. Again, we're still under the 200-day SMA. If you were to draw out a trend line here, yes, we're slightly above it, but we're still stuck in this range. Until we break this range of 85 to roughly 90,000, there's no reason to kind of think that we're going to be doing anything other than just up and down in these tight ranges, right? We've had 3 or 4 Christmas tree patterns in the last week or two, right? If you're not familiar with that, that's basically when the price shoots straight up and shoots straight down, just destroying everything in either direction. All that said, daily time frame doesn't tell us much. There's no hidden divergences or any special Elliott wave to kind of tell you that we're going to go to the go to the ground floor or the top, right? There's not a lot really going on. The key takeaway here is, unless this range-bound activity discontinues, we're going to continue, right? It's just going to happen until it doesn't. So between now and then, hypothetically buying 85, 86K, if that happens, that would be a good consideration for a long, because we'll probably likely bounce at that level. And then a good consideration for a short is 90,000, because we can see this level here, quite significant, holding very, very strong, right? So until that changes, we got to understand that Bitcoin's going to be stuck on stupid between now and then. But that's pretty much much the easy way to understand it here today. If you have other thoughts or other comments, please, why don't you go ahead and let us know below. Love to hear it. Thanks again for those of you who always consistently interact with my videos, and more so just always hitting the like button, just being phenomenal parts of my life, watching the videos all the way through. That really helps a lot. So deeply appreciate you. You got a special place in my heart. Thanks again so much. Friendly reminder to our traders, we got a 15% trading discount using my link below to register for Bitunix. You'll also automatically be eligible for future trading competitions through this exchange. It's an excellent exchange. There's no KYC required. Be sure to use my link down below to register. All right, folks, quick look here at Ethereum, just double checking some important stuff. This coin does look stronger than most other coins out there right now, at least specifically relevant to Bitcoin and its performance. If you kind of look at the side-by-side here, Bitcoin, lower lows, lower highs, kind of retesting its local high range at 87.8. We can see Ethereum rocking and rolling here, still looking like it wants to retest or break 3,000. So while I don't think we're just going to shoot to the straight up here for Ethereum, I do think short-term 3,000 and 30.50 makes a lot of sense. Let's take a look at the back-end liquidation data here and just kind of get a quick refresh and double-check kind of where we're at here. On the far right-hand side, we can see 2980 is essentially that area of open interest. It's kind of reaffirming itself as support. Liquidation delta is at 2 billion. While that's still kind of small, it's a lot better than Bitcoin's performance recently as far as liquidation is concerned. And once more, I pay attention to liquidation delta. I look at it every single day, and I can tell you that this is generally a good structure here based on the simple fact that it moves, or it's looking consistent with the charts, right? Generally speaking, when you see higher highs and higher lows and you see liquidation delta to the green, there's less likelihood of just a straight dump. Now, it can definitely happen on this coin. Absolutely, but just something to be aware of here that this coin does look still stronger than others. There's a reason why we have a long position open. I think we're in at 29.69, if I'm not mistaken. But it's a tight long, by the way, folks. We're not just we're trying to run to 4,000. We're looking at like 30 to 30.50 range, okay? And then it's just kind of like a higher leverage, low margin trade. All that said, 2,900 to 2,850 is that lower range, so please understand that there is a decent chance we do see that lower area of liquidation occur if we were to continue to pull back with Bitcoin. All that said, though, taking a look here at the 4-hour time frame, we're still kind of in this range here, for lack of better terms, between 2,900 and 3,000, just like Bitcoin's in between 87 and 90K right now. Most coins are going to be performing very similar to Bitcoin, but the local structure here, the more lower time frame structure, looks a lot better, a lot more forgiving than Bitcoin's. Bitcoin's kind of going down and trying to struggle like this, where Ethereum is kind of going up and ready to break its range here. So I do think we'll see a slight short squeeze here soon for this coin. It makes sense. The only thing that would disallow that to happen is if Bitcoin were to significantly pull back right now, which could still occur, but it just seems less likely in the short term. All right, so those are my thoughts there on Ethereum. What are yours? Why don't you comment below? Please let me know what you're thinking. Quick heads up to our traders. We got a 15% discount on trading fees if you use my link to register through Bitunix. Links down below in the description. All right, folks, quick look here at Solana, just kind of recognizing some important stuff here. Solana's actually looking pretty decent in the short term here, but it's very consistent with Bitcoin. So the simple way to understand it is it's not performing as well as Ethereum is. Most coins are not right now, and not like ETH is like super awesome right now, but it is looking like it's got a better microstructure versus Solana or Bitcoin. But if you do look at Bitcoin on the left-hand side, and then you look on the right here for Solana, you can see some pretty janky behavior. In fact, there was a significantly large candle wick that shot up to like 140. What is it? Yeah, 132 rather, and that probably destroyed a lot of people. So that's the only problem when you use Binance sometimes, folks. These are Binance charts I typically look at. There's heavy manipulation over there. Having said that, regardless of this ridiculous candle here, for the most part, Solana is essentially establishing higher highs and higher lows, but it did pull back consistent with Bitcoin here recently, a lot harder than it did than most other coins, or at least harder than, once more, Ethereum, which is kind of the baseline of a coin that really didn't do that. Okay, you look at see here with ETH, yes, it pulled back, but it's still maintaining its range. Higher highs and higher lows, or never established a lower high. All right, that's the important thing. When you look at Solana, unfortunately, you can see very synonymous in a lot of ways behavior with Bitcoin. So just be mindful of that. It's important to kind of understand that going into trading a coin, then you already understand, like, okay, well, if Bitcoin moves, Solana's going to move too, or at least it's going to move poorly with Bitcoin. So that's just kind of the concept there. So no shade against Solana. It's definitely a good coin. I love trading this coin, but for the most part right now, it's kind of in the doghouse is the best way to describe it. 130. So resistance, 120 support, liquidation delta is super bearish, not really something we like to see there. And if we look here at about 120 to 120, sorry, it was 118 to 122. That's the range of liquidation below the price. So I'm still leaning more towards that getting hit just because I feel like the same thing's going to happen with Bitcoin. It's got a pretty big chunk of liquidation between 86 and 87. So a distinct probability we see that. But for right now, lower timeframes do indicate we're going to see a short-term continuation higher. I don't really think that it's going to be very long-lived. I think it'll be kind of short, but that is kind of where we're at. Daily time frame, just once more to reiterate in case you are new to this channel, by the way, welcome aboard. We've got a lot of new subscribers here. This descending trend line is pretty straightforward, but we're still in a macro descending trend. Okay, so there's no other way around it. Right now, we're in a position right now where the price action is not looking good on the macro. So we really want to reclaim 130 to 135 first before we have any legs to stand on, specifically breaking this local range of 130 before we consider longs, at least a long, right? One that you hold for longer to higher price point. Right now, you're buying 120 and you're selling at 130. That's kind of the concept. We're stuck in a range, and until that changes, we got to presume it's going to continue. All right, so those are my thoughts here on Solana. What are yours? Why don't you comment below? Let me know. Love to hear it. All right, folks, quick look here at SUI, kind of seeing what's going on. I can tell you right away here, first and foremost, this coin is not performing super well versus Bitcoin. It is responding nicely here with this recovery, but if you do kind of look at the combination here of how well or how it's performing versus Bitcoin, first of all, it didn't spike up here previously when Bitcoin did. It kind of had a dead little bounce there. And then also we can see a pretty significant correction when Bitcoin pulled back. So while it's kind of one-to-one in a lot of ways, even though it's recovering nicely here, we can see there's a pretty solid resistance range here for us at about 145. So until we reclaim 145 and close above that, and Bitcoin is trending towards 90 or higher, 90K or higher, there really isn't much of a reason to take a trade with this coin just because it's super volatile. It's selling off a lot harder than it should, and it's pumping when it shouldn't, right? So a lot of ridiculous things going on, and in my opinion, just probably best to just kind of wait it out. All right. Taking a look here at 145, that is obviously the area of open interest. Getting above 145, I think, is an important level. We can see liquidation delta still bearish, and of course 138 to 150. It's kind of those areas of liquidation. Okay, so we do have a decent chunk of liquidation as low as 130, 127. So if Bitcoin were to hit or reclaim 86,000, hit that significant area of liquidation, which is quite substantial, by the way. This is liquidation chart for Bitcoin on the left. That's a lot of liquidation. Okay, if that were to happen, we're probably going to see the same thing, 130 to 135 for SUI. So be mindful and ready that could happen. Okay, doesn't mean you attach yourself to a bearish mindset per se. It's just we haven't broken bullish whatsoever. Okay, reclaiming 145 to 150 is going to be a super important area for us. Okay, other than that, short-term descending trend still bearish. We're still under all moving averages, under 50 on the RSI. I don't care if money flow index is increasing. It's a false positive on market cipher most days. That doesn't really tell us too much. Okay, 4 hours. Early indication of a trend reversal here, but until we break this lower high, lower low pattern, reclaim 145 to 150, I don't really see anything that's worthwhile here on this coin for the moment. But those are my thoughts. What are yours? I only look at the charts every single day for the last 20 plus years. So I do get kind of a sixth sense here after a little while, and this just doesn't seem appropriate consideration for a trade. But obviously, if you have a different opinion or different thoughts, why don't you comment below, voice your opinion. I'd love to hear it. Thanks again so much. If you're looking for a new exchange or possibly just want to help support the channel, Bitunix has got you covered. We've been partnered with this exchange for over 2 years. It's been our fan favorite for our community, and the reason why is because they take really good care of you. They offer trading reward bonuses as well as a reduction in fees. Best exchange I would recommend at this point. Link down below for more information. All right, folks, quick look at XRP and double check the important stuff here. First of all, I'm probably going to get some shade for saying that XRP looks terrible right now, and that's common characteristic for most XRP enthusiasts. But if you are like a real legitimate trader, you'll know that these are not the kind of trends or trading price action that you really want to trade into. You can kind of see here, it's a much choppier version of Bitcoin. Okay, and it's also pulling back a lot harder than Bitcoin. It hit 180 there to sweep that lower area of liquidation. Good news is that was an area we identified yesterday. That was a potential area for a long, just based on it being kind of the lower end of the range, and there was some liquidation there too. So technically, there's a little bit left here. If you look, we can see what was it? 1, 2, 3. It's about 1 billion, 2, somewhere in the range of about $2 billion got swept with that pullback there. There's still a good chunk, probably about 1 billion left, as low as 180. So while we didn't sweep all that liquidation, liquidation. Majority of that has happened. So the price did capitulate and bounce off that range once Bitcoin bottomed out. So it's pretty standard to see majority, if not all, liquidation to get hit, and then the price just reverses itself. So under that impression, if that is the case, the reverse action also exists, right? As soon as this 189 to 190s hit, the price will probably pull back, right? So just kind of be mindful and understanding that that is a very consistent thing in trading right now. It's unfortunate, but it's fortunate in a lot of ways, because we know this, and we have, I mean, this information is public, right? And it's easy to access. So use it to your advantage, right? But unfortunately, a lot of newer traders aren't familiar with this, and they're probably trusting Tom, Dick, and Harry out there to give them signals, and these are usually just a bunch of ridiculous people. Anyways, conversation for another day. 185 is that lower area of support based on open interest, so just keep in mind that could be an area there. But liquidation delta is still super high to the downside. Yes, that does incentivize the price to go higher because of that natural short squeeze potential, but seeing a short squeeze on a Sunday seems very unlikely. Sorry, I said Sunday. It's a holiday, basically like the equivalent of a Sunday, right? It's a low volume day. So I would say at this point, until we see this short-term descending trend line broken, we shouldn't be considering any trades. We're getting close to that. Of course, 186 may be a consideration for a long if we break back up above that point of control. But when I say confirmation for a long, I'm talking about like a super tight long to 190. We're not talking about jump in to 250 or $3, because most people seem to have that mindset that everything just goes straight up or straight down. While crypto can work that way, it's all about the little things that make the most difference, right? The most impact. And those are things I try to teach and kind of provide as a good philosophy for being a good trader. All that said, we're still range bound here. If we look, 188 is the local range the last 7 days, and the lower range here on the daily is 182. So we've been compressed within a 5-cent range for about 7 to almost 10 days here, and I can tell you that's not awesome. All right, until that range breaks, we're going to presume it's going to continue. Okay, so there's no indicator, no amazing thing that I can tell you here that's going to be like, wow, we're going straight up, right? Elliott wave isn't going to be like, oh, we're going to be hitting these specific levels. Well, actually, no, correction. It'll tell you that. It'll give you 50 different possible scenarios, but the truth is, none of it matters because we're range bound. Okay, until that changes, we really cannot presume to speculate we're going to go up or down. All right, so sorry if I sound like a broken record. I just like to reiterate this because we got a lot of new traders coming into our community, to the channel, and it's important to just kind of understand that this crypto is in a much different place now than it ever was before. Okay, there's a lot of different things I could try to talk about. I don't have enough time in this video to do that, but I can tell you what, we're looking at a very unique market. But XRP is not going anywhere anytime soon until we break above or below our local ranges. I would say it's best to expect it to continue to do the same thing it's been doing, which is essentially just stuck on stupid, consistent with Bitcoin in a lot of ways. Honestly, underwhelming versus Bitcoin for the most part, but that's most coin right now anyways. Okay, so those are my thoughts. What are yours? Why don't you comment below? I'd love to hear your feedback. Thank you so much. All right, folks, quick look here at Chainlink, just double checking some important stuff. We're just going to start with a side-by-side comparison, see how it fares with Bitcoin. We can see there's a pretty significant correlation in a lot of ways. In fact, almost a worse pairing, if you will. If we can see Bitcoin retest its local highs here on the 30th at roughly 89,000, and we can see Link failed to reclaim that as well, essentially establishing lower highs. So that does tell us that this lower high, lower low pattern is really not congruent with seeing any type of breakout or specifically like a good pairing, right? So just understanding that it's paired poorly with Bitcoin really helps us understand that this coin may not be a strongest investment for the moment until it decides to shift gears, right? I mean, no one's really going to ever know that until it happens. That's the funny thing about trading. So if we take a look here, let's go ahead and double check the backend data here for Chainlink, and just kind of make sure we understand the specifics here, because when the open interest ranges, when you get close to those levels or liquidation is too high in either direction, you really want to know that. So what I mean by that here is we're looking at 12.5, basically 1250 is that local area of resistance for Chainlink. That's an important thing to understand because that's going to work as a resistance, right? That's the area of open interest. Yes, the price will gravitate towards that, but right now, logically, it makes sense to consider a short there, just based on the simple fact that Link is underperforming versus Bitcoin. Bitcoin's likely to pull back after the short-term continuation higher today, and the overall sentiment is that this lower area of liquidation is definitely on the docket here. Okay, so if we look between 1180 and 1211, there's probably pretty close to $1 billion in liquidation there. That's quite a lot for this coin, okay? So just be mindful that is there. Also to be mindful of is liquidation short delta is high, which implies that the bears are in control. There's more shorts than longs. So why try to bet against that? I mean, you're trying to basically, you're trying to swim upstream, if you will, okay? It's just not the best strategy in trading. You generally want to go with the flow and go with the trend. And the trend right now is still down, okay? There's just no other way around it. All that said, a point of control here is about 1237, so that kind of reinforces that 1250 resistance range. Not saying we're just going to see the price pull right back here. It could absolutely continue higher, but there's no indication that we're back on track. While market cipher is probably giving you a false positive telling you to buy because we have money flow index increasing, that's not always the best factor because it's increasing based on these 14 candles falling off, right? So it's just really not the best gauge here. What I'm getting at is that most everything is bearish here on the daily time frame. So until we confirm otherwise, it's just too high of a risk to consider a long. Looking at open interest, or sorry, where to look at that? Looking at the money flow index and the RSI on the 4-hour time frame, this is more realistic. This basically tells us we have money flowing away from the coin. And even though stochastic's trying to swing up for a second time, that can be positive. Our RSI is right there at 50, and we haven't confirmed what we shifted momentum yet, okay? There is a little bit of fair value above the price at 1275, so we may see a push to 1250, 1275, but I think that's probably a better case scenario for us. If history repeats itself, we're probably going to see the price reject out at 1270 to round number $13, based on these being local resistance ranges here for us and just areas of confluence, okay? So between now and whenever, be careful taking a trade with this coin to the upside, at least with the mindset that we're going to see $14, $15, $16 from it anytime soon. Unless Bitcoin rallies and breaks 90K, none of that's going to happen, okay? We're probably more likely to see the low 12s to upper 1180 range here to hit this liquidation, okay? That would be a much more sensible place. All right, so keep that in mind, but I do think short-term Bitcoin may continue to progress a little bit higher, and if that were to happen, there might be a little bit of a continuation for Chainlink as well, but I would pay close attention to its correlation with Bitcoin, and if it starts to separate itself from Bitcoin, then that might be a different story. Even though we have one nice little hourly pump here, that's still not enough to trust, right? Still not enough. It's pretty bad price action. Once more, what do you expect for a holiday, right? Anyways, I hope you have a wonderful holiday. Thanks again so much for being a phenomenal part of my life. Don't forget to join us over at cryptocash.tech if you want to become a better trader, or just more importantly, you want to just kind of become part of a good community. We have free resources down below all over the place. Our Telegram and Discord are great places to start. I look forward to working with you either way. Thanks so much again for your time. We'll see you in the next one.